Hello, fellow traveler! So, I want to talk about Baizhu's shield. A lot of people are talking about how terrible this shield is, that it doesn't do anything close to what a Zhongli's shield might do, and I think that's very, very intentional on MiHoYo's part, so I just want to talk about what I think the purpose behind that is. If you want to know why I'm playing Mona on a Nilou team rather than Kokomi or Barbara, it's because sometimes I like to go against the grain. Sometimes, you have to play to meta. If you're going to beat the Spiral Abyss, you got to have your meta teams, and sometimes I'm just very anti-meta, and I just want to play characters that are fun. So I'm kind of experimenting here, trying out using her skill as a taunt to see if that can group or draw enemies in a different way. Her burst unfortunately doesn't amplify the bloom damage, but it does amplify other damages that she herself is doing, or Nahida's skill I think should be amplified here, so I don't know, I'm just having fun. Don't hate. Alright, so we're talking about Baizhu's shield. So he generates a shield every 2.5 seconds, and it is very, very low scaling. I mean, the thing is meant to break. So why are they doing this at all? Why put this in the game at all? Partially, I mean, he has healing, so if you do get hit, if you do get damaged, you're still gonna get healed, so you'll be okay. But one thing I see most people mentioning that's great about a shield like this is at very least, it's a way to give you interruption resistance. So you don't have to worry about getting your attacks stopped or get knocked way back to ruin your DPS. And interruption resistance is great. We've seen other units that do this. Dia does this, Xingqiu does it, and it's a really, really valuable thing to provide. But I don't think that that is the only reason. So if we look at someone like Nilou here, and we look at what makes Nilou, and it's her bountiful cores. So if we read this, partway down, you'll see it says, characters under the effect of Golden Chalice's bounty, which is what happens when she does her skill, and she has only Dendro and Hydro characters on the team. The characters affected by Golden Chalice's bounty will increase the elemental mastery of all nearby characters by 100 for 10 seconds whenever they are hit by Dendro attacks. So right here is an example. If you have a shield that is too strong and it actually tanks these hits completely, or you don't get damaged at all, you're losing this elemental mastery bonus. I don't know if there's even a shield that could be strong enough that really would prevent this from happening every 10 seconds or so, but it's just something to be aware of, that you may not be getting this bonus if you're not taking damage. This is just one example, but we know that this works for other characters as well. Unfortunately, I don't have Dia, so I can't show Dia myself, but we also know that Dia is a character that takes damage, so if your on-field character is getting damaged, she's taking a portion of that damage. And if she happens to be using a particular artifact set, such as this Vurukasha's Glow, we'll see that the elemental skill and elemental burst damage are increased by 10%, and they can get further increased by 8% up to 5 stacks, and this only happens after the equipping character takes damage. Whether this is the on-field character, maybe they're your Bloom driving team and you're trying to get their own elemental skill and burst up, or whether this is Dia who's off-field and still taking damage to activate this so that her skill and her burst can go up. The damage is required. So even though Nilou might have really, really strong blooms that probably would break most shields in the long run anyway, having a shield that intentionally breaks out of Baizhu does mean that these type of effects still work. And it looks like we're probably going to get more and more effects like this. More characters that when they take damage, or more artifacts that when a character takes damage, an effect actually triggers. We can also look at a character like Diluc. Now, you'll see he doesn't have anything like this in his main kit. There's nothing about taking damage, but if we look at his Constellation 2, when Diluc takes damage, his attack increases by 10%, and his attack speed increases by 5%. And this lasts for 10 seconds, and this can stack. So if you were running Diluc on a Burgeon team and you put Baizhu in there, triggering Burgeons is going to cause self-damage that will activate this constellation. So you could get increased attack, you could get increased attack speed. If you're, just running like a regular Vape team without a Dendro character and you have Zhongli in there, there's no self-damage that's really going to happen. You would strictly rely on an enemy hitting you to take damage to activate this constellation. So this constellation is really effectively worthless on most teams unless you have a reliable way that he can take damage, which could be through burning, through Burgeon. I mean, most of the dendro reactions are what can cause this. So Baizhu having a shield that can break easily means you're still taking damage, but then, of course, Baizhu is immediately healing some of that damage or all of that damage that you're taking. It effectively does the same thing as a really strong shield. Hoyoverse has released information about a new character, Kirara, and some of the rumors out there suggest that Kirara is also going to have a dendro shield, but hers might be beefier and tankier than Baiju's shield. And I see some people kind of saying, well, then what's the point of Baizhu? If I can play Yao Yao and get healing, then Baiju's healing is pretty much redundant. Or if I could play Kirara for good shielding, then maybe you don't need the healer, maybe you don't need Baizhu there. So why does this character exist? Having both, sure, that's consolidation, but if you have a good enough shield, you often don't need a strong healer, and if you have a good enough healer, you often don't need a good shield. But what may happen is Kirara's shield could be too strong to activate some of these take damage effects, which may not be a problem in most teams. You know, I don't know very many people that are even using Dia at all. But if more of these effects start coming up, and that shield is too tanky that you're not taking any damage, that would actually be a problem that Baizhu would fix. His shield is so weak that even regular bloom damage, let alone Nilu's bloom damage, would still probably break that shield, cause some damage, you'd heal the damage back up, you'd trigger all those effects, and you'd get the benefits from those. So I fully expect to see more characters and more artifacts and more weapons that do things like this. And I also think that this is going to start making some interesting decisions out of some of the weapons that already exist that are counter to this. As an example, we have Serpent Spine, a weapon that's really beneficial as long as you're not taking damage. So this would be a case where using a character with this weapon and Baizhu does become a problem, because Baizhu will let you take that damage, whereas, playing, in my case, Ito here with someone like Zhongli can prevent him from taking the damage, and therefore the negative part of this weapon will basically never be triggered, and I can do all the damage I need to with Ito's scrawny little arms. So that's why I personally think this breakable shield was a very, very intentional decision on Hoyoverse's part. And I said this in a previous video, but I do think, especially in Fontaine, we're probably going to see more reason to get this self-damage. Considering we have an Archon coming up that's either going to be the god of healing or HP sharing or something to do with your health, it just makes sense that this character might also, or certain things in Fontaine might also contribute to this idea of taking damage, getting an effect out of it, and then using a character like Baizhu to let that happen. So anyway, those are my quick thoughts on why I think Baiju's shield, quote-unquote, sucks. Even though I think it actually just opens up some windows for times when you would want to use a shielder like Baizhu versus sometimes using a shield, assuming this even happens, like Kirara. If you've got any thoughts on that, share in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I will catch you next time, traveler.